Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Real Fishermen. We have Justin Lerner on the show tonight. What's going on, Wes? What's going on, Justin?
How you doing, man?
What's going on, buddy?
Justin,
hey, JR, you
go
want
ahead,
to wait?
Brad.
You want to give it a few minutes, just let some people get on
Sure.
before we start letting Justin tell us who he is and what he does for a living and what he does for fishing and all that good stuff and where he's from. And Justin, sometimes we have, I think, there's most of the people that watch this show, every now and then. I think last week we had like 35 or 36 people that watch it one time, and then some people will come on and go off. And there's a few shows we've had like up to 300 comments on. And
oh wow!
And sometimes it's just who gets on and who don't or who can, and so. But I don't know if you can see the comments or not. But if anybody, when you start talking about what you're doing, hey Josh. If anybody asks some questions, we'll let you know what the question is and who's answering it, and we'll kind of go from there. What do you think, JR?
That sounds good.
All right. Well, JR, you're
sir.
the host of this show. You want to go ahead and get it started?
I'm the co-host, but yeah, I can. Guys, Justin is he's pretty much an expert, and I've looked at his Facebook. The guy does a lot of ice fishing. I actually saw him catch I don't know, how much did that thing weigh, Justin, that bluefin tuna?
That one I think that you're referring to is over 1,200.
Wow.
That's insane.
Man, I've been watching Wicked Tuna for years. I don't think I've seen a 1,200 pound. I don't think I've seen a 1,200 pound bluefin tuna even on that show.
Yeah, so we took a number of trips actually up to Prince Edward Island in Canada. And up in the Canadian Maritimes there, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, the biggest of the big bluefin tuna go up there. And, usually it can start in the late summer, goes through fall. But the fish up there are absolutely enormous. And it's your best shot at a tuna over 1,000 pounds.
Wow. I know that the stripers, they migrate up that far too, right? So are they ever mixed in with the stripers?
The stripers are more in the coastal rivers. It's funny is that area of Canada. It's relatively recent that the stripers have been making their way up there in numbers, but they're starting to get some. I know one of the guys I fish with up there was telling me. There's a lot of wild trout and salmon fishing in the coastal rivers. And they said that every once in a while you get a nice striper on the little coastal creeks that they fish for, sea run brook trout and rainbows and some Atlantic salmon.
Wow. I noticed in the video here, I'm going to show you the video right quick. Wow. So what? Was that like was that a popper? What kind of lure was that?
It was actually a live bait. So that was the first year we went up there and we hit it just right. And the herring run was in full effect. And pretty much we'd go out of the harbor about a mile and pull up their herring nets. And immediately you'd have, 500 to 1,000 plus pound tuna busting around the boat. And you could literally hook them at will. You could hand feed them. So I was taking live mackerel and a spin rod and no hook, just tying the braid around the tail of the mackerel and casting it out and reeling them across the surface like that and watching the tuna come up and
holy
come
cow.
up and slam them.
I noticed there was one picture with you in the water with a tuna. Was that same tuna?
No, that was a different one. I think that one was about a 700 pound class fish.
Holy cow. Wow.
No, where was this at, Justin?
That's Prince Edward Island in
Prince
Canada.
Edward Island, Canada.
How cold was the water? Was it warm?
It was like 65.
Summertime.
That's about like when you jumped in the water down the tail race, JR. That was about 65 degrees that day. That's pretty cold.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, after fighting one of those tuna for a while, it was nice to jump in. You just gotta be quick because there's also big white sharks and stuff all around.
That's what I was gonna say. I would be scared to death to jump in there with the tuna, man, because that's a delicacy for a big shark.
Oh yeah, and there's no chance that I'm out swimming the tuna.
No.
So when you catch big fish like that, do you y'all don't hold the rod? Do y'all leave it in a rocket launcher and just wind it, or do you ever try to fight that fish standing up, like holding it with a fighting belt, or?
Oh, when we're up there, we do it exclusively either stand up with a fighting belt or a fighting chair. We don't fight them out of the rod holders. That's more of like you see that a lot on Wicked Tuna and all that because that's a commercial thing. Big heavy rods and those techniques. You can land the fish quickly as possible because every fish is you don't want to lose it because it's money.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd want to stand up with a 1,200 pounder though. You'd probably want the chair.
Yeah, I mean, proper drag setting. I mean, the gear that we have nowadays, where smaller reels can get really, really high drag output, shorter rods, bent butt rods, it really can make it easier on you than it ever was.
Yeah. So, do you go up to the Chesapeake Bay a lot?
Actually, this was my first trip down to the Chesapeake last winter to fish with Chuck. I'd never been down there. I'd been down there to fish cobia in the summertime. Sight fish for cobia out of like Virginia Beach and along the bridge tunnel. But that was my first shot at those giant stripers. And man, that is an amazing fishery.
It is. And heck, I was with Wes, and we went out with Clint on a cobia, a sight fishing cobia trip, and that was one of the best fishing trips I think I've ever been on. I mean, I was getting up in the crow's nest, sight fishing, casting to cobia and handing the rod down to Wes, and it was a blast, man.
Hey, let me tell you what he did. After he hooked, he stuck 3, right? And on that 4th one, I went up and I got on the middle tail. Have you been on Clint's boat, Justin?
I've seen it in the marina. I haven't been on his boat.
Well, I got up on the middle tower when he stuck it, and he wanted to fight that fish, so he handed me the rod down. Then I handed the rod down to, I forgot who was down on the boat. Was Kenny? Was it Kenny or who was with us that day? Anyway, no, Chuck. And then I handed the rod down to Chuck, and then JR actually stuck the cobia from up top, then climbed all the way down to fight the fish. He said, hell with this, if I'm going to stick through them, I want to fight one of them.
Yeah. That was fun.
A good job. That was a blast. I think we caught, what did we catch in 2 days?
I think we caught 14 when I was there.
And then
nice. Did you guys keep one for the table?
The first day I was there.
Yeah, we did. It was so good too. God, cobia is so good. I know. Have you caught any walleye? I think I saw a picture of you holding a walleye.
I mean, New Jersey's toward the southern end. I mean, they do have them down in the Maryland area, but we have several fisheries for walleye here in Jersey. The Delaware River has a great fishery for them. Raritan River, Lake Hopatcong.
You're not catching those ice fishing though, right?
No, for some reason they're extremely tough to catch through the ice in Jersey, with the exception of the Delaware. But ice fishing on moving water on a river is very, very dangerous. And most years you're not going to get enough ice to stand on there if you get any at all.
Right.
This year was different. There was some ice, but again, the thickness of the ice can vary greatly over short distances. So it's a really tricky situation.
Do you ever keep any of the walleye, or you just catch and release?
I keep most of them. I mean, we fish for them through May and June on Lake Hopatcong when the herring are spawning, and we're fishing late night for them. Those I usually let go because I don't have any desire to clean a fish at 2 or 3 in the morning. But they're delicious.
They're so good. I've caught a couple in Tennessee when I was striper fishing, and I think they kind of taste like black bass. You got like the same consistency of a black bass. It seems like.
Yeah, but I certainly do keep some for the table.
Hey, Justin. So out of all the places, let's start here. Name some of the places that you fished all around the world.
Australia, Costa Rica, Spain, Germany, Caribbean, Bahamas, Vanuatu, Canada.
What was your favorite?
Where were you offshore fishing in those places? Were you doing any offshore fishing?
Yes. In Costa Rica, Vanuatu, Australia, Canada.
Do you have a long ways to go to get out to like, the shelf, blue water to the pelagic fish?
It all depends. Like I said, so Costa Rica, we fished, it's not necessarily a long run, but we fished seamounts and FADs that are about 60 miles offshore. And those areas were just loaded with marlin. But I mean, somewhere like Vanuatu, I mean, you could throw a stone to they're volcanic islands that come straight out of the depths. And I mean, you can go a few hundred feet from shore and you're in super deep water. It drops right off.
That's amazing.
So what was one of your most memorable trips? Where was it and why?
Vanuatu had to be one of them. And that was the last international trip I took before the pandemic, and was going out there to fish for a species called a dog-toothed tuna that are, they're basically the largest member of the bonita family, but they're basically a tuna with giant teeth, and they patrol the reefs. And when you hook up on them, I mean, most places you hook tuna, they're known for long runs. They fight really hard.
That must be what this is.
That's exactly what that is. But these fish are so close to the reef that they immediately take off and try and cut you off on the reef. I mean, starting that trip, it took me travel time, including layovers and everything. It took me 36 hours to get out to those islands.
Wow.
But it's just another world, and just a beautiful place.
Now, where was this at? What part of the country?
It's called Vanuatu, so it's an island country that's east of Australia. It's probably about a 4-hour flight from Australia.
So you did a lot of these fishing trips. Like I was watching this fishing show last year. I don't remember the guy's name, but he was doing something in Africa. He was in a river in Africa doing something with the bass. What do they call the bass that's got teeth? It's a largemouth. It's in the largemouth family.
Are those the ones they call in Papua New Guinea that they call the black bass over there?
No, it's another one. It's actually got teeth. But anyway, and he was talking like it took him like a day and a half on an airplane. Then he got to the airport. Then it took him another 3 days traveling just to get to this river, just targeting this one fish.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sounds like something you do. I mean, that's motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it makes it all the more, the longer the journey, I mean, it makes it all the more special when you finally do connect and land what you're out there for.
I bet Vanuatu was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just a tropical paradise.
Wow.
Water's crystal clear. I mean, 100+ feet of visibility.
Where were you here, Justin?
That's Miami.
Okay.
That's sail fishing in Miami. I lived down in Miami Miami and Fort Lauderdale for about 9 years. So I did a lot of fishing down there for a number of different species.
That's
so
awesome.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? If you had to choose, what would be your favorite species that you chase or that you like to catch?
Oh,
That's
wow.
a tough question.
That's a very tough question. I mean, I absolutely love tuna fishing. But from my days down in Florida, tarpon are an amazing game fish.
Yes.
That's Wes's favorite right there.
Yeah, boy.
I mean, they're common down there. They don't cost a ton of money to go. You don't have to have a fancy boat. You don't have to, make long 60, 80 mile runs offshore to get them.
And you can catch them on challenging fish. You can catch them on cut bait.
Absolutely. And they get big.
That's why I started targeting. That's why I started targeting the Arkansas blue catfish, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Cheap.
Justin, let me tell you, I don't know if I asked you about this. I'm going to do some saltwater fishing this year. I've been talking so I got a few friends that fish out of Murrell's Inlet. I got one guy that fishes out of Little River.
I hope
Inlet.
so. You have a Grady now. So
yeah, I know, right? Well, when I was tarpon fishing in Georgetown Inlet about 3 years ago, and we hooked up on a tarpon and lost it when we first got there. We were. Have you ever been to the Georgetown You know where you're going out to the Georgetown Yetis?
I haven't actually been down there now.
Well, when you're going out, there's a long, they call it an eddy, but it's almost underwater at outgoing tide.
Mm-hmm.
You can just barely see the top of the rocks, and there's about 3 miles of it out there.
Oh wow!
And at high tide, if you're not careful, if you don't know what you're doing, you'll come right over it and tear a boat all to hell. But anyway, so we were like 200 yards off of this, and we were free lining live mullet. Well, about 5 minutes before the captain was going to get, we were going to get everything up, a rod goes off. And I was like, hell yeah, that's my tarpon. Well, I fought that fish for about 40 minutes, and it turned out to be a spinner shark. And I think he said it was 65, 70 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, I never did think no more about them until I went to Isla Morada last year, and I caught that 150-pound tarpon. And then I don't know if you've seen that video. A lot of people have seen it. My wife was live. I hooked up again on something, and we had a Daiwa 8-aught bait. A Shimano 8-aught bait runner with 60-pound braid on it. And before the captain could get the power poles up and crank the motor and move, we were smoked. He smoked shit out of that reel.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, God, how reckon you big that tarpon was? He said, that was a shark.
That was a Shimano 8000 bait runner? Wow.
Yeah, it smoked it. He said, tarpon can't swim that fast. I didn't know that. He said, a spinner shark can outswim a tarpon. He said, I could just tell by the way that fish was running. So ever since then, I've been thought about that a lot. So that's what actually, I know people call shark junk fish, just like a lot of striper fishermen call catfish junk fish, but you like what you like.
Right.
So that's what I'm going to do this summer. I'm going to target some spinner sharks because they're awesome to catch. And the way they come out of the air, they're just an amazing fish.
Yeah, it sounds like a mako almost.
To be what, JR?
It sounds like a mako almost.
Yeah, I'd say they're more acrobatic than a mako.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're a supremely underrated inshore fish. They hit hard, they fight hard, they jump, they're good sized fish. You can't beat it. They check all the boxes.
You're catching all these big old bluefin tuna, man. Like here's one. Let's see. Wait a minute. Yeah. Let's see now. Anyways, you got all these big bluefins. Are you what would be your go-to live bait and your go-to? Do you ever troll for them, like with artificials, like marauders or anything like that?
Yeah. So the last picture that you showed was actually a big eye. That's called a big eye tuna.
Oh, this one here.
That's a bluefin. We got that on
there's
top
the big
water.
eye.
That's a big eye tuna.
Oh yeah, there's the big eye. Wow.
So to the cool thing about big eye, just to get on them for a topic. So big eye are kind of like a cross between a tuna and a swordfish. And big eyes, they stay real deep during the day. They're 800, 1,000 feet down during the day, and they come up. They follow what's called the deep scattering layer, which is small organisms that rises and falls according to daylight. And they follow squid and bait fish up at night, so you control them. You control them at night. They'll pop up during the day too, but you control them at night. But yeah, for bluefin, spreader bars are absolutely excellent. Most of these trolling lures will catch any of the tuna species: bluefin, big eye, yellowfin.
Spreader bar, are you using that for is that like a teaser that you're just like putting out, or is that actual, they got hooks on them?
It has a single hook on it, and it basically has 2 bars two bars and has a whole bunch of squids off it, and then trailing down the center is one single one with a hook. Makes a lot of commotion on the surface. Yeah. And they love it. A lot of times just a rigged ballyhoo with a skirt over it. The great trolling bait. Plugs actually work real well. There's a number of different.
How fast would you normally troll when you're pulling those type of artificials?
Usually a little slower with bait, but up to 7-8 knots with lures, but 5 or 6 with bait. But depending on what's in the spread, the sea conditions and everything, I'd say anywhere from 5 to 8 knots.
Back to that big eye, you talked about that. It kind of reminds me of like plankton. Does the moon affect that at all? Like, would you change your depth and how you fish depending on the moon phase?
Well, yeah. So it's a lot of times those species, if you're drifting baits, will stay a little bit deeper on full moon because the bait won't come up. I actually my I worked as a marine biologist, and I'd done some research on swordfish, and what we had found is that swordfish basically come up to the they come up to the surface, which by surface I'm talking about like the upper 300 feet at night to feed on all the bait and squid that come up, and then during the day they go back down anywhere from 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 plus feet. And they go up and down like clockwork. And on full moon nights, when there's more illumination, the bait stays a little bit deeper, and they stay a little bit deeper too.
Mm. So when you're catching these fish, you're catching them 300 feet deep, the big eyes?
The big eyes, usually we just troll on the surface. They'll come up.
Okay.
So you can troll. Usually the best time would be to troll from the evening through dusk into night, to 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Wow. I couldn't imagine like trolling at night offshore.
Yeah.
It's scary. Offshore fishing is scary when it's, I've always wanted to spend the night out there, but I've just never had the nuts to do it, and not in my boat anyways. But
yeah, I mean, that's, the tuna fishery up in New Jersey. This year we actually had a lot of bluefin inshore, up off of New York, only a mile or two off of New York, out to like 20 miles. And we had yellowfin 40 miles offshore, which was very close. But our typical fishery, the canyon fishery, I mean, you're running anywhere from 65 to 90 miles offshore. So most of those trips are overnighters. You troll during the day and you chunk bait at night. And fish, live squid, live mackerel, any kind of live bait.
There's a good canyon right out of Virginia Beach, just straight out the Norfolk Canyon. Yeah. Heard that was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the same thing. I think it's a little closer out in Norfolk. I think it's probably I think it's in the 50s.
50s.
But,
I've always wanted to fish the midnight lumps out of the mouth of the Mississippi down there.
Yeah, for the giant yellowfin.
You used a word a few minutes ago, and I've heard this before. Pelagic. How do you pronounce it?
Pelagic.
Pelagic. Okay, what is considered a pelagic fish?
They're fish that usually are traveling in open water. So you think of any of the tuna members, billfish, wahoo, mahi-mahi, mako sharks, things like that are all pelagic species.
Okay. Good deal. Hey, did Chuck tell you what I did during the tournament up there last year? Well, him and Bob. Yeah. Him and Bob was talking about, how the bluefin tuna came up there last year. It was amazing how they showed everybody's catching them. So, I sound country as hell anyway. So I get on the radio and I said, what is the limit on striper up here? And somebody come back and said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from South Carolina, homeboy. I said, what's the limit on striper? And I said, listen, I come up here, I seen in the paper, that y'all had bluefin running up here. So I come up here from South Carolina to get on some bluefin. And I said, hell, I've caught like 12 fucking striper today. I've got one almost 55 pounds. I said, and we've got 3 over 40 pounds. And can you even keep them up here? I don't even know the regulations for y'all striped bass. And you know what this guy told me?
What?
He said, look at your GPS and give me your coordinates. And he said, I'll come over and help you. And Chuck said, leave him alone. Yeah. So that was pretty funny. Dang.
Yeah, it's weird watching you real fishermen like you and Chuck. You guys will be out catching these giant fish one day, and then like the next day you'll be catching like these little panfish.
Hey, we got a question for you, Justin.
Sure.
Scott Perry wants to know, do you have a bucket list fish that you haven't caught yet, or have you caught everything you've always wanted to catch?
Oh, no. There's always more. Right now on my bucket list, one of my destinations, I want to hit the Amazon, and definitely those big arapaima are definitely on my bucket list. Or there's fish, they call them vampire fish. They're called pyara. They have two giant teeth sticking up from their bottom jaw. It's another bucket list species of mine.
I just remember when you said Amazon, the name of that bass, Peacock Bass.
Yep.
That's what that guy was chasing, Peacock Bass. And they kind of look like a largemouth, but they just got a fucked up grill right in here.
Yeah, you can, you can catch, there's a species of peacock bass in South Florida. Those smaller species called butterfly peacocks that I think the record is somewhere around 11, 12 pounds. But, down in South America, the ones that they're chasing, the speckled peacocks, they get up to 25 plus pounds.
Wow.
And they're super hard fighting fish for their size.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think is the hardest for its size? What would you say is the hard? Let's talk freshwater first.
Freshwater, okay.
I've always said a brim, pound for pound, is the hardest fighting fish in freshwater. What do you think? What's yours?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, brim are definitely hard fighting for their size. They're definitely super strong fish. I'd also add in salmon.
Okay.
Salmon are pretty hard fighting, very, very fast fish for their size.
Yeah. You
What
do
about
some
salt?
salmon fishing, I saw.
Mm-hmm.
What about salt?
Salt water's got to be tuna.
Yeah. Yellow or blue or both?
I'd say bluefin fight harder than yellowfin, but it's honestly splitting hairs at that point.
Little tunnies.
Their little
I
tunnies
know.
are,
I caught 116-pound tuna when we went down off Louisiana. I think we were by the Chevron Workhorse. Am I saying
okay,
that?
out off the rigs.
Yeah. We were probably 100 yards off, maybe 200 yards off the rig when I hooked up with that field. We were just making circles.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch
And I
any of
don't-
those catfish while you were out there?
I don't want no more of that.
The hardheads?
No, that tuna. I don't want no more of that. I was sore for a week after drilling that fish in.
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing, but me and Scott Perry was talking last night. I like to catch big fish. I like something that smokes my drag, but when I catch something, I don't want to catch nothing that's going to have me sore for a week.
I couldn't imagine catching a 1,000-pound tuna on stand-up gear.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, you'd be sore.
Oh yeah.
What'd y'all do with that fish, Justin?
Well, up there in Canada, they have very strict regulations. So they were basically allowing the guys to keep one fish commercially a year, tuna, and then they'd have raffles for other. They'd have to have a tag for each fish that they kept. So they'd have a raffle for additional tags. So what the guys started to do was they decided to start a catch and release recreational fishery up there, since the commercial fishery was so tight. And we released the big fish. They didn't have any tags, but that was totally fine with me. Even if you did keep one, I don't know what you would do with the meat, but there's something great about watching a big fish like that just swim off again. There's all those big fish, all those, just like striped bass, all those big tuna, they're really the drivers for the future generation. I mean, the bigger, in general, for most fish species, the bigger a fish gets, the more eggs it produces and the better quality eggs it produces. So you have better survivorship from those larger fish. So that's why in general, there are exceptions, but in general, releasing the biggest members of the species is almost always in the best interest.
Now on the bluefin, and I noticed they do this, and I know a lot of this. I also talked to Damon Melcho the other day. He does a lot of the bait tanks, the extreme bait tanks for wicked tuna.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of that's TV, but I do notice, like when they, when they're cutting the fish and they measure the fat content, where they stick that probe in there and pull it out.
Yeah.
Now, in most cases, a lot of people don't want fat. I know fat, as far as like meat stuff, that's where you get your flavor from. So what's so important about the fat content in the bluefin tuna?
That's just so on the sushi market, that's what's prized. You'll hear people talk about the toro, which is the belly fat of the fish.
Yeah.
It's very buttery, very greasy. That's what they look for, which is why on the sushi market, bluefin is like the number one. If you go to any particular sushi restaurant and something's just called tuna, like a spicy tuna roll, and it's not specified, that's usually Big Eye, because bluefin is the reddest, darkest meat, then big eye, then yellowfin, and then albacore being, almost a white meat fish.
Well, I always heard, or the way them guys was talking down there in Louisiana, yellowfin is what you want to keep, and blackfin's the neighbor tuna. And I said, "What do you mean a neighbor tuna?" He said, "Because that's what you give to your neighbors."
You know what? I've eaten a lot of blackfin in Florida, and I thought they were great.
They're great.
Really?
Yeah, I like them.
I haven't eaten a bad tuna.
I've caught blackfin out of Morehead City. I've heard of people kite fish. I've always wanted to kite fish for blackfin.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Now, what does the kite do? What's the difference in pulling a bait across the water or a top water bait and letting it run across the top of the water versus a kite holding it up out of the water?
Well, kite fishing with live bait, it basically holds that bait right on the surface, so that it's not even, you don't have to retrieve or anything. The wind's holding that kite up, and you have your line running through a clip. And one of the positives is all of your terminal tackle, your leader, and everything's out of the water. The fish can't see that, but it keeps the bait splashing right at the surface. And that does a lot to attract fish. I mean, it's used, it can be used for any species, but primarily, up north for tuna and like sailfish and other pelagics down in South Florida. But the other part about it is that it's just super exciting. So you'll see that fish come up and eat that bait and pop it out of the kite. But you definitely see days where you have baits out on the kite that are skipping around on the surface, and you have, baits just free lined off the back of the boat, and the fish are constantly hitting the ones off the kites, and the ones off the back of the boat aren't getting touched. So it definitely attracts a lot of attention to them.
Those kite rods aren't cheap either. They're kind of cool looking. They're kind of short and stout.
Yeah. So when you're using a kite, can you use artificial, or is it live and artificial, or mostly just artificial for a wet? I guess
most guys use live bait, but they'll slow troll with kites out of Southern California, and they'll use soft plastic flying fish imitations and kind of skip them across the surface, and they'll come in and grab it. And it's not a kite, but you'll see up north, a lot of guys use green sticks for tuna fishing. It's called a green stick, and you'll see it on wicked tuna also. Mm-hmm. And it's a big stick right off the top of the boat.
It's almost like a downrigger that they run vertically, maybe.
Yep. And it skips a bunch of squids on the surface. And it's the same idea, only you're trolling with artificials. But anywhere offshore, those fish are all looking up, and they're looking for bait fish that are busting the surface. A lot of them are feeding on flying fish, things like that. So, skipping things across the surface gets a lot of attention, and, subsequently a lot of strikes.
Now in saltwater, what is some of I guess at the end of the day, my opinion, anything in saltwater fights better than anything in freshwater. That's just a given. I don't know why. But what would you say is the most aggressive fish in saltwater when it comes to hitting a live bait or, cut baiting or pulling artificial? What would you say? I know wahoo hits pretty hard. They're pretty quick. But what would you say is the most aggressive fish?
I mean, that title might go to bluefish. They're almost always willing to cooperate. Sometimes to the point where it's annoying. If you ask Chuck about trying to striper fish when the bluefish come in thick, and it's almost impossible. I mean, the stripers can be there, but the bluefish are just eating everything the second it hits the water. They're super aggressive fish. Another one down more by your way is amberjack.
Yeah.
You can go.
Amberjacks are fun to catch.
Oh, they're a blast. But you can go out. They're super aggressive on any of the reefs or wrecks. But bluefish, I think, day in or day out are probably some of the most aggressive fish in saltwater.
Amberjacks are so fun. Their meat is good. People complain about those worms, but I think the meat's great.
Yeah, if you just cut the worms out and
cut the worms out. Yeah. I like catching them on poppers. I was out there one day and saw a guy catching them on these giant poppers. I was like, oh my God, I want to do that.
Yeah, we go. I try and make a trip every year down to Wilmington out of North Carolina, and we go out and jig them. We're actually supposed to go in a few weeks. It's just it's tough with the weather in March, but they're fun trips. I mean, you know, you have Amberjack, Amicos. You can fish, you know, top water for blackfins, get wahoo, African pompano, things like that.
African
Great
pompano.
trips.
They spearfish those out at the Frying Pan Tower.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I actually go spearfishing them. I've seen guys catching amberjacks on top water, on poppers doing out there at the towers too, and Diamond Shoals Tower.
You know, you were talking about when you lived in Fort Lauderdale. Me and my wife went on vacation down there about 4 years, maybe 5 years ago.
Mm.
You know, we went out on a charter. We chartered a boat with 2 other couples. You know, and they were catching some bonita and maybe I think they were catching a couple of kingfish. And, you know, and that captain kept asking me, he said, "You don't want to reel nothing in?" I said, "No, man, I'm good." I said, I just like to catch big fish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just having a good time watching my wife. So he said, well, about 20 minutes before we go in, he said, "We're going to pull over. I'm going to stop over here on a reef or a wreck."
Mm-hmm.
Hey, kitty, kitty. And he said, "See if we can get you a reef donkey."
Oh, yeah.
What was that? And
A reef donkey.
"Okay." And I said, "What is that?" You know, and he said,
What do
"Amberjack." And I said, "Oh, okay." So we pull over there, and sure enough, I forgot what bait was using now, but he dropped it down on a down line, and we hooked up. And he said that's the biggest amberjack he's seen, the second biggest amberjack he's ever seen caught off the coast of Fort Lauderdale. It was 54 pounds.
Wow.
He said down here they just don't get that big. He said this is like fucking insane.
Yeah.
And in fact, I looked about a year ago. He still got my picture up on his website.
Oh, nice.
And the weight of it, he said that was just insane. He kept trying to get me to mount it. I said, "Man, I said, hell, I'm good. I'm not paying $2,000 amount of fish. I don't give a damn how rare it is."
Yeah.
Speaking of reef donkeys, Justin.
Said, yeah, let him go. So they put him back in the water.
Nice.
What do you call those?
The mate was more excited than I was. He was just all over himself. When he seen how big that fish was in the water, he went ape shit crazy.
What do you call those suckers? You call those something donkeys?
Oh, I was calling them river donkeys. I
River
don't know.
donkeys.
It seemed like a fitting name.
And those are some big suckers.
Yeah, occasionally, a lot of times I'll fish small jigs for trout and bouncing them along the bottom. You know, those things will pick them up, and they fight pretty good. And you know, I'm using ultralight tackle and 6-pound tests, so they're a lot of fun as well too.
You typically go with 6 pound when you're ice fishing?
Ice fishing, yeah. I mean, it depends the species. If I'm ice fishing for northern pike or toothy species like that, I mean, you'll go up to 50 or 60-pound tests for the leader. But usually for like salmon, I'll go with 4 to 6, trout 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, Scott Perry says, and actually a buddy of mine, me and Josh Flynn was talking about this because he just got back, and he said it's the most amazing place he's ever fished in his life. And he fishes a lot. He travels a lot, but I don't think he's been as many places as you have. But anyway, Scott Perry wants to know, do you consider Costa Rica one of the best offshore fishing places? He said, "I've always wanted to fish there, but it's just so far to trailer my boat."
I mean, Costa Rica is just an amazing fishery, and you don't even have to go offshore for it too. I mean, offshore you have, you know, tons of blue marlin, giant sailfish, you know, some black marlin, huge mahi, great yellowfin tuna fishing, but it's easy to overlook the inshore stuff. And I mean, within 100 yards of the beach, you know, you can catch. They have huge snook over there too, big rooster fish, you know, a number of different species of jacks, bluefin, trevally, all kinds of stuff. So it's an amazing place to fish. Absolutely.
I don't know where JR went, but you know, one place we haven't talked about. I mean, I mentioned it because I was there last year, but you know, they call Islamorada the sport fishing capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true, or is that just? I mean, there's just good fishing there, and that's the name it's took on, or?
I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, that Islamorada is not an amazing fishery. It absolutely is. I mean, you know, you have a little bit of everything there. You have inshore stuff, you know, for you know, bonefish, tarpon, permit. Then you can run offshore for sails, swordfish, a number of different reef species. You can run across Florida Bay to the north and fish flamingo in the Everglades for, tarpon, snook, sea trout, redfish. So there's a lot of options there. I mean, as far as the capital of the world, I mean, there's some pretty amazing places out there to fish. I mean, Australia has some absolutely out of this world fishing, even relatively close to shore. I mean, there's
Panama.
Panama's got amazing fishing. But I mean, especially in terms of the continental United States, I mean, I would say so. But it also depends on what you're looking to catch.
Yeah. So would you say just the coastal waters around the United States in our areas? So would you say Islamorada is probably the top one?
I'd say it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely up there in terms of just the number of species you can target and variety on any given day.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the prettiest places that I've ever seen in my life. I've been as far west. I've never been to California. I've been all the way out to Montana, and I've been to every state in the United States but 3. But the Florida Keys is just beautiful for me. The color, the water, going over the bridges, the smell. It smells different down there. It's just an amazing place. It's the prettiest place I've ever seen in my life as far as fishing and water and what you could do. It was amazing to me.
Did you see that guy that got eaten by that white shark a while back?
Yeah, that was off the rocks that that was terrible.
What happened?
There was a guy he was going for a swim and got eaten by a white shark.
Scott Perry wants to know: have you ever had any run-ins with white sharks, or probably great whites? I'm guessing while fishing up north or in Australia.
I dove with them in Australia, so we did see him there. We have seen him. I have seen him up in the late fall and colder water times up off of New Jersey. Haven't had any issues with him, but we've seen him.
Now, I think I'll let you know you're still planning to come to Middle Tennessee with me this year, correct?
Yeah.
All right. I talked to Chuck too. I think he's going to come. So, there again, I got to wait and see, what's going on with the water and the weather, and hope we don't get 15 inches of rain. I mean, last year I went up there, I fished 5 days. We caught one fish about 38 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
The year before that, we cut bait one night and caught 7 fish, 5 over 40 pounds, 4 over 40 pounds. So but the weather last year was just brutal. And there was some fish caught early, and I think I went a little bit late. So we're going to try it again this year. I mean, I guess the pressure will be on because I hate to bring somebody fishing with me, and especially when I'm trying to target something and they don't catch a fish. Like when JR came to the bay, he hooked up. We thought he had a 50. It was a 49 and some change.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we got that fish in the boat, I was good. I said, the pressure's off me.
Yeah.
I'm a personal best striper, so I don't give a damn if we get another bite or not. I'm good. We had a blast. I don't know where JR keeps going. He's going out on us.
But I mean, then it's fishing, man. It's always fun just to be out on the water, and it's not always nothing's ever a guarantee.
Yeah. Out of all the people I've fished with, I would say Chuck Manny pays more attention to detail than anybody I've ever fished with.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on point on everything. And if there's just one little thing that don't look right, the way we're pulling bait or the way a rod or way a planer board looks, or, and it's just, if he don't like it, he'll change it. I mean, and he takes notes. Do you take notes? Do you keep notes when you fish?
I do. But yeah, I mean, Chuck is extremely detail oriented, and that's why, I mean, he's the best of the best. He's hands down, the best.
Yeah.
But taking notes is, keep paying attention to those little differences that, that might make the difference on a tough day.
Yeah.
We all have days where fishing's just absolutely great. You can't do anything wrong, but it's about consistency day in and day out, and really paying attention to those details and making sure everything looks right. And how one little difference can make or break a trip. And that really depends. I mean, that really is across the board for whatever species you target.
So what, I guess across the board, if you had to choose, you would choose salt over fresh, right?
Probably, yeah. But I mean, I like it all. I just like, from catching huge tuna to, 12-inch trout in mountain streams. I mean, I love it all.
Yeah, Chuck's having a blast down there. Here in South Carolina, he's doing what we call pond hopping.
Yeah.
He's just going around casting in a pond. He was down there catching tarpon in a little pond on redworms. Who does that? Who does that?
That's amazing. That's
only
absolutely
Doug can catch a tarpon on a damn redworm. But he's just having a blast down there.
Yeah.
Glad you could join us, JR.
Well, I went to get a sun drop out of the fridge, and some leftover Chinese food fell out, and I had to clean that up.
Damn. We're just going to eat Chinese tonight, but the only Chinese restaurant I like in Greenville is closed on Tuesday, so I wound up eating a Whopper.
Nah.
Justin, y'all have, and I'll tell you, we aggravate. Scott Perry is from Michigan, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's well known down here. I'm not going to say well liked, but he's well known. Not everybody likes Perry, but we call him a damn Yankee. And me and Chuck was talking when we were out on the boat, and and like he said, South Carolina, I don't know what our population is, but everybody talks about assholes being from up north. And Chuck said, we're looking up the Hudson River. You look over to the left, you got New Jersey. You're looking over to the right, you've got New York. But he said, you go up through there so far, you're looking at 22.5 million people.
Oh, yeah.
22.5 million. When you got 22.5 million people, that's almost as many fucking people as y'all got in the South, period. So He said, you're going to have more assholes. You got more assholes.
Yeah. I've never thought of it that way. That's true.
But I really enjoyed it up there. I mean, all the people that I met, of course, we were with the fishing crew or fishing crowd, were awesome. Everybody was nice. They loved to hear me talk. One guy at the tournament, at the captain's meeting, he said, keep saying that word, y'all. He said, I've never heard that before. He said, what does it mean? I said, same thing as you saying. If y'all say you guys, we say y'all. We just cut it short.
I like how you say water.
Best food I've ever eaten. I mean, we just had a blast, dude. Had a blast.
Yep. Bluefin tuna. I could not imagine. Crappie. You catch crappie too, ice fishing.
Absolutely. Crappie. That's another delicious fish.
Yes, it is. I think we call that the freshwater flounder around here.
Listen, it's hard to beat catfish. A lot of people, I love catfish. Catfish and crappie is my two favorite freshwater fish to eat.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas blue catfish, they're definitely good. They're better than people give them credit for. I think what happens a lot of times is people will catch fish and they will offer the fish to someone, and that they didn't clean that red meat, that lateral line out. And so, that's kind of bitter. And some people are like, catfish. But yeah, if you eat some catfish that are cleaned properly, they're really good.
Now, you guys are keeping the smaller ones, like the ones under 10, 15 pounds to eat?
Honestly, Justin, I don't keep any fish. My days of cleaning fish are over. I am 100% sport fisherman. If I'm not, if I do keep fish, it's for bait. I keep them for bait. So.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people, especially down at Santee. I've kept a few 30-pound fish and eat them. If you cut that lateral line out, you clean that fish good and fillet it, I still don't believe you can tell it. People say when they get so big, they're not good. They
all taste the same.
A catfish tastes the damn same. I'll eat a 40-pound catfish that I know come off a fillet, come off a 40-pound, and one that come off of an 8-pound fillet. You can't tell the damn difference.
No, you can't. People that say that the big ones don't taste as good don't catch big fish.
Or they're just trying to get you to put it back.
Or that, yeah.
Fair enough.
Catfish said good. Catfish are good fresh, not frozen. I disagree. I think they're just as good as striper. You can freeze them as long as you freeze them properly. They're just
The only thing to keep in mind is that the bigger those fish get and the older they get, the more contaminants are going to be in their meat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You might grow a third leg if you eat one, but they taste pretty good.
No, I mean, I know, at least in my opinion, because thankfully now the large female stripers are protected, but I kept a really big one probably 12 years ago. I'll tell you what, I mean, the best eating stripers are, the ones right around in Jersey, 28 to 38 inches. I mean, 28 to 32 inch, that's your best eating striper in saltwater, at least. When they get really, really big, I just don't think they're as good. And the same goes with like red drum.
I don't even like striper. I've tried striper. Even if you cut the lateral line out and soak it in milk for 3 days, it smells like fish to me. I can't get the fish smell out of it. I don't like it.
Craig, striper, that's one of the best eating fish.
Striper is nasty as shit. Hybrid and spot is better than striper.
I don't know about that.
Yes, that's a fact. Hey, how you put it, JR? Don't you like it? That's a fact.
I like it when you tell things that aren't facts and you put fact at the end.
That's a fact. Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, my favorite fish, as far as the ocean, I never eat it till this year. And I don't know, did you bring any of that cobia home?
Oh, yeah.
I did, yes.
Cobia, I think they call it the pork chop of the sea.
They're amazing.
Cobia and mahi. Red snapper's hard to beat. But that cobia and mahi is the two of the best saltwater fish taste that I've ever eaten.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Definitely in my top 3.
Cobia. Hey, here's a question that got asked the other day on Facebook. Had a lot of different opinions on is when do you consider it offshore? Like when you're fishing in the ocean, like how far out is it considered offshore?
Justin answered that the other day. Tell him, Justin.
So I would say that that's dictated by where you live, and what matters is the furthest run that you have to get to target species. So if you're living in South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, a lot of guys down there consider running 10 miles off the beach, 12 miles off the beach, 15 for swordfish, for mahi, tilefish. We consider those offshore. In New Jersey, where the canyon runs are 80, 90, 100 miles, offshore would probably be. They actually have now came up with another designation called midshore. But I mean, so inshore would be anywhere out to 25, 30 miles, and then 30 to 60 would be midshore, and 60 plus would be offshore. But
so it depends on where you're at.
Yeah, so it depends where you're at.
So around here, if you're like in the Grand Strand area where it's like a 90, 100 miles to get out to like the shelf, then it's going to be farther than someone living in, on the North Carolina coast, Outer Banks or something.
Yeah, and it's a function of where you live. I mean, there's places in the world, there's places in Australia where you can catch marlin and black marlin and yellowfin tuna off of the rocks.
That's crazy. That's like Hawaii or something, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about the Gulf Stream? Now, when I lived in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot what year it was, but I lived in West Palm Beach. And the first saltwater fishing I ever did in my life was off Lake Worth Pier. And one of the guys was telling me that the Gulf Stream moves. It's a constantly, it moves in and out.
Yes.
There's a certain time of the year that the Gulf Stream gets closer to West Palm Beach and Lake Worth right there around that pier area. That's the closest it gets to shore before it moves back out.
Correct.
So that is correct. Because I know when the Gulf Stream, and I forgot what time of year it was, but man, listen, there for about 3 weeks, you couldn't get a spot on that pier. Everybody's out there with balloons. And I'd watch them. They'd put lifesavers. They'd tie a piece of leader off a swivel, put a lifesaver on it, and then tie it to the balloon and just let it go out. And I asked that guy, what the hell does a lifesaver do? And he said, well, most of the time, by the time, the current will get your bait out there with the strip, if you can get it past the current, past the tide coming in. If you get it where you want it, you can just snap it off. Or a lot of times we just let it go until the lifesaver dissolves and then just let your bait drop.
Yeah.
But there was about 3 weeks out of the year you couldn't buy a spot on that pier because they said the Gulf Stream was so close and everybody was fishing for whatever was swimming upstream. So
Yeah, I mean, South Florida is where the Gulf Stream originates off between in what's called the Florida Straits between the Florida and the Bahamas. It's a continuation of the loop current that goes up through the Gulf of Mexico, but it pretty much heads east from there. And to hit the Gulf Stream off of New Jersey, you'd be probably 150 miles. Off South Carolina, you'd probably be 100, 120 miles. I mean, it does move in and out. But most of our offshore fishing up in New Jersey is based on these eddies of water that break off the Gulf Stream, because we don't usually run out to the Gulf Stream itself, but these eddies of water break off, and you can see them on surface temperature charts, on chlorophyll charts based on the clarity of the water.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you ever use anything to fish tent breaks, like Rofs? Like, I remember I used to use Rofs, and they would send me this email with this link, yep. And it would have this map of all the different colors of all the tent breaks and everything. And I would try to go out and fish the tent breaks. You use anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rofs is a great company. There's a number of other ones, Terrafin. There's a whole bunch of companies that do it now, but it's vital for fishing up in the Northeast, for offshore fishing in the Northeast, where temperature breaks and clarity are all super important structure. And we have a number of different canyons up and down the coast off of New Jersey, and those eddies will break off, and they'll slide down the shelf and then go back out and reabsorb to the Gulf Stream. And depending on those positioning of those eddies is where the fishing is going to be good. I mean, you can head to a canyon that has excellent structure, but if the water isn't there, then that's not where you want to be fishing. So you really, to be consistent, a consistent offshore angler off the Northeast, you want to have those temperature charts. You can't be running blind, especially when you're running, 60, 80, 100 miles offshore.
I think my answer to the when do you know you're offshore question was when the water looks like Porta-John water. Dark blue.
Well, yeah,
Western. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, where you're talking about in Lake Worth, Boynton Beach. I mean, the shelf is close in anywhere from, Stewart down to Miami, but Lake Worth, Boynton Beach, that area is the narrowest part of the shelf.
Yeah, Boynton Inlet is one of the roughest inlets on the East Coast.
Oh yeah, and you have, you can be out in right around a mile offshore. You're in 250 feet of water.
Yeah, that's correct. We were fishing on the jetties down there one day. I think it was my second week in South Florida, and me and my dad was out there fishing. We watched three, not one, not two. We watched three boats sink in the inlet that day. Three, back to back. And then the Marine Patrol finally come out there and put a siren up, and they wouldn't let nobody come in or out. I don't know what was going on, but there was another guy over there talking to my daddy, and I remember him and my dad was talking, and they said that's the roughest inlet on the East Coast. I don't know if it's just the way it's designed, the way the tide comes in or what, but it's brutal.
Yeah, that's a really dangerous inlet.
Scott Perry wanted to know, do you use Ambassador 6500s?
No, I haven't used those.
Now, what's your favorite reel?
Oh, they're picking on me, Justin. I'm an Ambassador fan. I like the 6500s.
All around, what's your favorite reel? Who's your favorite? Shimano, Abu, Daiwa?
I mean, for just general stuff, for my light tackle freshwater stuff, all the way up. I like the pens. I like the pen battles a lot. In saltwater for conventional stuff, I love Abbott reels. Mm-hmm. They have even for the giant tuna, they have a 50 wide reel that's capable of putting up to 110 pounds of drag pressure. So, you get 700, 800 yards of line on there, 130 pound braid, and you're set for just about anything.
I don't think I'd want to catch nothing that big, Mike.
But I love the Abbott reels. All of my conventionals are pretty much Abbott, and then most of my spinning is Penn, all from my little trout reels up to my saltwater spinning. But if you want to do really heavy duty, casting lures for really big tuna, for big giant trevally, where heavy duty drag applications are necessary.
Giant trevally,
GTs. That's obviously where the Stellas are really good. Daiwa dogfight.
Well, there was when we were fishing in the tournament, Maddox, Todd's son, we were throwing what kind of lure you call it? It was white, and I know it. I just can't think of it. We were right there at the bridge at Highlands Marina.
Mm-hmm.
Where you come out where Chuck keeps his boat, that bridge back to the right.
Yeah.
Well, we threw an anchor right there, and it was getting dark, and we were throwing that artificial lure out there, and I forgot what they call it now. But anyway, Maddox had done caught like 2 or 3 fish, and his, Todd's his dad, and Todd said, "Man, you're really making me nervous, son." He said, "Step back a little bit." He said, "You're holding $1,000 reel out over the water like that. You're making me nervous." I looked at Todd and I said, $1,000? And he asked Chuck, he said, "Chuck, what did that reel cost?" Chuck said, $11.50, $11.60. And it was what you just said, a Stellar, Shimano
Stella.
Yeah. And I looked at that reel. I said, $1,100 for that? Chuck said, "You'd be surprised."
What do you think, Justin? Daiwa Saltiga or Shimano Stella? What do you like that?
I've actually never used a Saltiga. I've used Stellas. Stellas are great reels. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah. I've never used either.
They just didn't look like there was a lot of reel there to me for that kind of money. So,
yeah.
But anyway, needless to say, Maddox backed up about 3 foot. So in case
Stella's worth every penny from what I've gathered.
Yeah.
They're heck of a reel.
Okay, what makes it worth that kind of money?
Well, the amount of drag, the quality components, the quality, Wes, the quality is there. The weight to strength ratio, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, they really shine for those bigger, the heavy duty applications where if you're constantly using a lot of drag on the reel. I mean, guys use Stellas to land,
right,
tuna that are hundreds.
That's the difference. Is you can land tuna, 100+ pound tuna on Stellas.
Well, it depends the size of the Stella, Wes. I don't know if he had the, like, we're talking about the 20,000s.
We'll put it to you this way, Wes. You can spend $300 on a Saragossa, or you could spend, I don't know, how much does a Stella cost? $1,500, $1,200. You could spend $300 on a Saragossa or $1,200 on a Stella, and you might catch 5 tuna on that Saragossa before it needs some work. You could catch 50 on the Stella before it'll need some work. No. Am I far off on that, Justin?
No, you're not. I mean, a lot, for most species, I mean, you don't need, that's like the top of the line application. You're fishing for, huge, really, really big fish with spinning gear, and constantly using super heavy drag settings. So the reel's under a lot of stress. But I mean, I love the battles for anywhere from, freshwater up through, saltwater. I mean, I've had them. They're not expensive, and they perform, and they've performed for me flawlessly for a long time.
And they're braid ready.
Yeah,
they got the braid ready spools on. All right, guys. Well, somebody's bird is that a bird?
That's my dog's bone.
Oh. Well, it's been an hour, Wes.
Oh, buddy. Justin, listen, I appreciate you joining us, and
it's a pleasure. My pleasure.
And I'll get back with you. I said it's going to be in April. I'm just going, it could be the first week, it could be the third, but I'll give you a good heads up, and maybe you and Chuck can get together and come up together, or I don't know how y'all will do that, depending on he'll probably come up from South Carolina, so he'll be down here by my way. But
yeah,
I'll get you some addresses, and I don't guess we'll stay at the Ali Bobby Motel since y'all coming. We'll stay at another motel because Chuck, the Ali Baba Motel might make Chuck a little bit nervous because all them rednecks will be out there cooking steaks and making hamburgers and drinking beer and raising hell. And which I don't know, Chuck might like that. He might fit right in with it. So.
I think Chuck would like that.
Yeah, he might like that.
All right, guys. Good night. Thanks a lot, Justin. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.